We were discussing the classification of banks. Now, the third basis is on the basis of domicile. We can classify banks into two on the basis of domicile. First one is domestic banks, and second one is foreign banks. So, first of all, domestic banks. So, what is a domestic bank? Banks which are registered or incorporated in India are called domestic banks. So, such banks are registered in India as per the act enacted in India. For example, Syndicate Bank, Vijaya Bank, Dhanalakshmi Bank, etc. These are all domestic banks. Now, what is a foreign bank? Foreign banks are banks which are registered or incorporated outside India but having branches in India. Such banks are called foreign banks. So, foreign banks are registered outside India but they are operating in India. For example, Citibank, Standard Chartered Bank, HSBC Bank, ABN AMRO Bank, etc. The next one on the basis of organizational structure. So, based on the organizational structure of banks, we have different types of banks. First one is unit banking, second one branch banking, third one chain banking, fourth one group banking, fifth one correspondent banking, and sixth one consortium banking. Okay, so first of all, unit banking. Under unit banking, the operations of the bank are confined to a single office only. So, no branches will be there. Only one unit of a bank is operating. Independent and isolated units perform banking operations in a limited area. The area of coverage of the bank will be a limited area. It has no branches. This system was originated in USA. Then now what are the advantages of unit banking? First one is local development. The unit banks have a specialized knowledge of the local problems and serve the local people because it operates in a particular area. Now branches are there. So such banks will have a knowledge about the local problems. So such banks can serve the local people. The funds of the locality are utilized for the local development and are not transferred to other areas because no branches are there. So the funds mobilized from the local people can be utilized for the development of that particular area. Second advantage is that easy management. The supervision and management of a unit bank is much easier and more effective. The reason is that there is only one unit, so management and supervision of that bank will be very easier. Next one is no monopolistic tendencies. Unit banks are generally of small size and hence there is no possibility of generating monopolistic tendencies. Next, promotes regional balance. Under unit banking system, there is no transfer of resources from from rural and backward areas to industrial and commercial centers. So it helps to promote a regional balance. if the unit is established in a backward area or in a rural area, then there is no scope for transfer of resources from that area to industrially developed areas. So it helps to promote regional balance. Quick decisions. All decisions are made at the local level, and hence there is no delay in decision making. Okay, so only one unit, all decisions relating to such banks can be made at the local level itself. So there is no delay in taking decisions in the case of unit banks. Then now what are the disadvantages of unit banking? First one is lack of specialization. Unit banks are small scale banks with limited scopes. So we can't implement division of labor in unit banks. So lack of specialization is one of the important disadvantages of unit banking. Second one is no scope for spreading risk. Since the business operations of unit banks are highly localized, there is little possibility, or there is no possibility of distribution and diversification of risk in various areas, because only one unit is there, so we can't spread the risk of one unit with other units. Next one is inability to face crisis. Limited resources of unit banks also restrict their ability to face financial crisis. So when the bank faces some financial crisis, uh, only limited resources are there. So it creates some sort of difficulty in case of financial crisis. The next disadvantage is no banking development in backward areas. Unit banks, because of their limited resources, cannot afford to open an economic banking business in rural areas and small towns. So, in most cases, such banks will concentrate in developed areas. So, they will not start a banking unit in rural areas or small towns. Next one is costly remittance of funds. A unit bank has no branches at other places. So it has to depend upon the correspondent banks for transfer of funds, which is very expensive. So only one unit is there. So in order to transfer fund from one place to another, it has no branches at other places. So such bank has to depend upon the correspondent banks for transfer of funds from one place to another. So it is costly. Then local pressure. Local pressures and interferences generally disrupt their normal functioning. The local pressure of the people in the place where it is located. Then next disadvantage is no economies of large scale operation. Unit banks are small in size, so they can't enjoy the economies of a large scale operation. Only small scale operation, so we can't reap the benefits of economies of large scale operation in the case of unit banks. Then now the next type of bank is branch banking. So in branch banking, a bank has a large network of branches scattered all over the country. You just take an example, State Bank of India. Okay, it has number of branches. It has a number of branches all over the country, and some branches are working outside India. So in branch banking, a bank will have a large network of branches scattered over the country. This is actually delocalized banking, which carries on business through a number of offices. This system of banking was developed in England and later spread to Canada, France, Germany, etc. India also follows branch banking system. So SBI, then Canara Bank, then Bank of Baroda, Central Bank of India. All these banks have a number of branches. So such banks follow branch banking system in India. Then now what are the advantages of branch banking? First one is economies of large scale operation. So we have already discussed that such banks function with a number of branches scattered all over the country. So it operates on large scale. So we can reap the benefits of economies of large scale operation. Next one is geographical spreading of risk. The bank can spread its risk geographically under this system. So the losses incurred in one area can be offset by profit earned by branches in other areas. So it is possible. We can geographically spread the risk of one branch in particular area by the profits earned by branches in another area. Okay. Next one is economy of cash reserves. Cash reserve. Okay. So a branch has to keep only a lower cash reserve under branch banking. Every branch has to keep only a small cash reserve. What is the reason? If necessary, they can avail cash from other branches of the same bank. So they can reap economy of cash reserves also. The next one is uniform interest rates. Branch banks charges the same interest rate from different areas. So branch banks increase the mobility of funds from one region to another, which brings uniformity in the interest rates in different places. For example, State Bank of India charges same interest at Calicut, then Mumbai or any other place, the rate of interest will be same. Remittance facilities. Under branch banking, the banks have their branches in different places. So it is easy to remit funds from one place to another at minimum cost. So different branches will be there at different places. So it is very easy to remit or transfer funds from one place to another at a minimum cost. Effective credit control. Branch banking helps the central bank to implement credit control measures more effectively. Next one, high banking standards. Branch banking provides better and efficient services to the people. It can introduce advanced banking techniques and maintain high standard of operation. So branch banks can maintain high banking standards. What are the disadvantages of branch banking? First one is regional imbalances. In branch banking, the financial resources collected from rural areas are transferred to big industrial cities. This results in regional imbalances. Okay, the fund collected or financial resources collected from one backward area will be transferred to branches working in developed areas or cities. So this will result in regional imbalances. Second one is delay in decision making. The complicated organization structure of a branch banking system results in delay in decision making. Suppose we have to take a decision relating to a branch at Vatagara. So we can't take an important decision. We should communicate the matter to the head office. They will decide and they will inform whether it must be implemented or not. So it will take some time. So delay in decision making is another important disadvantages of branch banking system. Expensive. Operational expenses of branch banking system is very high. A number of employees will be there and number of offices are there. So operational expense will be high. Greater chances of mismanagement. Management of banks working under branch banking system will be difficult. This results in mismanagement, corruption and frauds. Concentration of economic power. Most of the banks under this system are in the hands of a few industrialists. This leads to monopoly and concentration of economic power. Lack of personal contacts. A large bank tends to become more and more impersonal in its dealings. So, lack of personal contact. The owner of the bank or the employees of the bank have no personal contact with the customer. So, lack of personal contact is another important disadvantages of branch banking system. Then now, chain banking. Under this system, a small group of people control three or more banks that are independently incorporated. So, three or more independently registered banks will be there, and a small group of people control all these banks under chain banking system. The controlling group members are majority shareholders in these banks. Why a small group of people control these banks? Because they have majority of shares in that banks. What are the advantages? This system facilitates efficient use of limited resources. Chain banking system helps to use limited resources very efficiently. Second one, this system is most suited to meet the local needs of credit and finance. Next advantage is this system provides efficient system of management. And another advantage is that this system is very cheap. Then now, what are the disadvantages? First one, due to limited risk taking, profitability will be low. So there is direct relationship between risk and return. When we assume more risk, then profitability will be high. So here, limited risk is there, so profitability will also be low. Second disadvantage is that social welfare programs undertaken by these banks will be very low. And next one is this system encourages bossism in management. A few people will control three or more banks. So encourages bossism in management. The next one is group banking. Under group banking system, two or more banks are brought under the control of the same management through a holding company. Okay, so a holding company will be there, and two or more banks are brought under the control of same management by forming a holding company. One holding company controls and manages the functioning of subsidiary banks. ഓക്കെ, അപ്പോൾ ഉദാഹരണം പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ കുറച്ചു കാലം മുമ്പ് വരെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ബാങ്ക് ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു ഹോൾഡിംഗ് കമ്പനിയായിരുന്നു, SBI. അവരുടെ സബ്സിഡറീസ് ആയിട്ട് ധാരാളം ബാങ്കുകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ബാങ്ക് ഓഫ് ട്രാവൻകൂർ, സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ബാങ്ക് ഓഫ് മൈസൂർ, സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ബാങ്ക് ഓഫ് സൗരാഷ്ട്ര പോലുള്ള കുറച്ച് സബ്സിഡറി ബാങ്ക്സുകൾ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അപ്പം അങ്ങനെ കുറേ സബ്സിഡറി ബാങ്കുകൾ ഒരു പാരൻ്റ് കമ്പനി SBI എന്നുള്ള പാരൻ്റ് കമ്പനിയുടെ കീഴിൽ കുറച്ച് സബ്സിഡറി കമ്പനികൾ നിയന്ത്രിക്കപ്പെടുകയാണെങ്കിൽ അതിനെയാണ് ഗ്രൂപ്പ് ബാങ്കിങ് സിസ്റ്റം എന്ന് വിളിക്കുന്നത്. Then what are the advantages of group banking system? First one is centralized administration. The participating banks have the benefit of centralized administration, who will administer the functioning of other banks. The parent bank or holding company will administer the working of other banks, subsidiary banks. Second one, enhancement of operational efficiency. The operational efficiency of the participating banks is increased with the help of shared knowledge and experience. Mobility of resources. In times of emergency, funds are transferred from one participating bank to another. In the case of emergency, we can transfer funds from one bank to another. Large scale operation. The participating bank can enjoy the economies of large scale operation. So these are the advantages of group banking system. Then now let us see what are the disadvantages. First one, lack of control. There is no effective and specialized management in group banking system due to flexible and indirect control. Inefficiency of member banks protected. The inefficiency of one participating bank may affect the other participating banks also. Next one, difficulty in mobilizing funds. Group banking does not have the capacity to mobilize funds as in the case of branch banking. The next one is correspondent banking. Correspondent bank is a financial institution that provides services on behalf of another financial institution. So it is a bank or financial institution that provides services for another financial institution. A correspondent bank conducts business transactions, accept deposits, and gather documents on behalf of another financial institutions. So correspondent banks are used to conduct business in foreign countries and act as an agent of domestic bank. Okay, so a domestic bank can use the services of a correspondent bank working in foreign countries to accept deposits, to transfer documents, to transfer funds, etc. Then what are the advantages? Payment between banks is simple, rapid and effective using the services of correspondent banks. Two or more banks can exchange products or services each other for mutual benefits. All independent banks can retain their independent identity. We are using the services of correspondent banks, but we have an independent existence. The expert services of specialized staff become possible. We can use the expert services of a correspondent bank. What are the disadvantages? Smaller banks have to depend on correspondent bank for their functioning. So this may affect their existence. Smaller banks usually depend on correspondent bank for their functioning. So this will certainly affect the existence of such smaller banks. Next one, resources remain limited due to smaller size of member banks. Then now, consortium banking. In consortium banking, a subsidiary bank is created by numerous banks. So a number of banks will create a subsidiary bank in consortium banking. A subsidiary bank will be created by numerous banks. And for what purpose consortium banking is created? A consortium bank is usually created to fund a specific project. A big project is there. So in order to fund that particular project, 10 or 15 or 20 banks will form a subsidiary bank to finance a big project. What are the advantages? It enables the banker to spread the risk with other participating banks. So the risk of the project can be shared with other participating banks by forming a consortium bank. It provides for efficient appraisal of the creditor due to collective wisdom and knowledge of the participating bank. Okay. So efficient appraisal of the creditor is possible in this case because we can use the collective wisdom and knowledge of the participating bank for the appraisal of the creditor. Next one is small banks which are not in a position to provide huge finance can enjoy the benefits through consortium banking. So small banks, such banks are not in a position to provide huge financial assistance, can enjoy the benefits through consortium banking. Then what are the disadvantages? It is difficult to limit the liability of a consortium member. A number of members will be there, so it is very difficult to limit the liability of a consortium member. Second one, third parties find it difficult to enter into a contract with a non-legal entity like a consortium. So consortium is not a legal entity. Then third party find it difficult to enter into a contract with a non-legal entity. All banks are legal entities, but a consortium is not a legal entity. So it is very difficult to enter into a contract with a non-legal entity by the third parties. Next one, lack of permanent structure makes it difficult for a consortium to establish long-term business relations with third parties. So it is a temporary structure. Consortium bank is a temporarily created bank, and it is very difficult for a consortium to establish long-term business relations with third parties. The next one, on the basis of Reserve Bank schedule. Two types of banks are there. First one is scheduled banks and second one is non-scheduled banks. Then what is a scheduled bank? A scheduled bank is one which is registered in the second schedule of the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Okay. A scheduled bank is a bank which is included in the second schedule of the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. A bank must satisfy certain conditions to be included in the schedule, second schedule of Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Let us see what are the conditions to be satisfied by a bank to be included in the second schedule. First one, the bank must be engaged in the business of banking in India. Bank must be engaged in the business of banking in India. Second one, it is a paid up share capital and reserves or not less than rupees 5 lakh. Paid up capital and reserves of the banking company must be at least 5 lakhs. But now, in order to start a new bank, the RBI has prescribed a minimum capital of 100 crore. So, this provision will not hold good now. Third one, it must satisfy the RBI that its affairs are not conducted in a manner detrimental to the interest of the depositors. Okay, it may satisfy the RBI that the affairs of the business are not detrimental to the interest of the depositors. And fourth condition is that it is either a company or a corporation. The bank must be in the form of a company or in the form of a corporation. Okay, these are the conditions. And every scheduled bank, if the bank is included in the second schedule of Reserve Bank of India Act 1934, such a bank enjoys certain facilities. What are the facilities ensured by scheduled banks? First one is, it becomes eligible for loans from RBI at the bank rate. It can take loans from RBI at the bank rate fixed by RBI. Second one, automatically acquires a membership of clearing house. Okay, so a clearing house is operated by Reserve Bank of India to clear the debt of banks. So it becomes automatically a member of the clearing house. Then what is a non-scheduled bank? A non-scheduled bank is a bank whose name is not included in the second schedule of Reserve Bank of India Act 1934. Such a bank is called a non-scheduled bank. And these banks are not entitled to the special facilities offered to scheduled bank. So that we have already discussed what are the facilities or special facilities offered to scheduled banks. So non-scheduled banks are not entitled to the special facilities offered to scheduled banks. Okay,